Understanding China has never been more important and more difficult. Takshashila's latest executive capsule course, Watching China, is an all virtual course that will help you decode China's politics and policies. Learn about the party state structure, ideology, and policy drivers. Master the language of Communist Party discourse and open source research. The course is perfect for professionals, journalists, students, or anyone curious about the Asian giant. Sign up now on the link in the description to start understanding China like never before.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of All Things Policy. I'm your host, Suman, and I do hope your year has begun well. The year promises to be exciting and momentous in terms of policy, politics, for various reasons. You could pick your reason for it. If you're in Delhi, maybe the elections in Delhi. If you're in Bihar, again, the upcoming elections probably makes the entire scenario more exciting. However, this time I am looking more long-term, and my reason for excitement for this year is all the discussion that is going to go around the probable census. We don't know yet if it's going to happen, but all indications are that the census will happen. And the ensuing delimitation and reapportionment process. A few of my colleagues and I have been trying to track this for a while. We've done a couple of papers and we've had a few discussions around it. Very exciting, interesting, invigorating discussions. Today, I'm joined by my colleague Miheer, and we are going to try and give you a primer of sorts of all things around this whole reapportionment delimitation exercise. You would have read a lot of it in the press. You would have heard a few podcasts maybe, but we are just trying to add to the discourse on this so that everybody has an informed opinion when the issue finally hits. Okay, firstly, we need to differentiate between delimitation and reapportionment. While they are used interchangeably, there is a subtle difference, right? The difference is in constituency versus states. If you redraw the constituency based on population, it is delimitation. The apportionment of seats for a particular state is reapportionment itself. So to understand all of this more and to give you a larger view of this, again, welcome Miheer. Miheer, welcome to the show.
Hi, Suman. Great to be here.
Yeah. So let's start off. What, in your opinion, is the actual issue around this? Why is there so much news around this? Why does there seem to be so much controversy around this?
Right. So, as you said, delimitation is the process of redrawing electoral constituency boundaries. And right now, it comes at a kind of a crucial juncture in India's democratic journey. And two main problems that delimitation needs to, or I think that it should try to solve, is the high representation ratio, as you can call it, which is the number of people an MP represents, which is extremely high in India. So on an average, an MP in India represents about 20 lakh people. Compared to that, in countries like the US, it's about 7,40,000. In Britain, it's about 1,20,000. So that's the first big problem that delimitation needs to solve. And the second one is that this ratio differs wildly across states in India, right? So the average is like 20 lakh approximately. In smaller states like Sikkim, one MP represents about 6.7 lakh people. And in larger states like Rajasthan, the figure rises to over 31 lakh people. So this high ratio, across India, like an average ratio across India, and also it's difference, the wild difference across states. I think those are the two main problems that in the delimitation exercise should want to solve. Just so the Constitution mandates under Article 81 that an MP should represent between 5 lakh to 7.5 lakh people. So it's kind of violating the constitution as well, not following its mandate. Violating is too strong a word. But yeah, I mean, these are the two big problems that delimitation needs to solve.
Yeah. So to summarize, what you're saying is, firstly, our MPs are representing too many people in a constituency when compared to the rest of the world. And
Yeah.
two, within India, the number of people that an MP represents varies widely, right? So I think the second part is what is causing a lot of problem and a
Yeah.
lot of discussion around. Just in principle, just to put the principles out there, first principles in the sense that the entire democracy is built on the principle of one vote, one person, one vote, right? So the value of each person's vote in a democracy should be the same. However, this
Right.
gets violated again.
Diluted, kind of.
Yeah, in when an MP represents different number of people in different states. That is one thing. Two, the issue is that if now, because of this entire exercise, if we redraw all the constituencies and we give roughly the same amount everywhere, what happens is that the principle of federalism, which is also very central to our constitution, gets violated because the number of seats gets changed and therefore the voice of all the people may not be heard. That is the contention. So I think we need to step back a little and try and understand what caused this issue. Where did it all begin, right? So can you just give us a short history of sorts of this?
Yes, sure. So when the constitution was kind of written, it was said that the census, which is a population census, will happen every 10 years, and based on this census, the seats in Lok Sabha will get delimited and reapportioned to states based on their population. So that was the main kind of rule. The censuses have been happening kind of more or less regularly across the last 50 years, but only 3 rounds of delimitation were initiated. So based on the 1951, 1961 and 1971 censuses, delimitation was conducted, right? So seats in Lok Sabha were increased. They went from 494 initially to 522 and then 543. However, after the 1971 census, the Indira Gandhi government paused it for 30 years.
71 census did not progress with the delimitation. Am I right? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Right. So after the third kind of exercise, this was paused by the Indira Gandhi government due to concerns about representational imbalances, because a lot of states, because the fertility rates in states were very different, right? So this was paused to kind of let states have that time to balance their fertility rates out, and then once they were balanced and populations were increasing at kind of the same rate across all states, they said we would again start the delimitation exercise. So the kind of exercise was paused for 30 years. Then it came back. The issue came back in the early 2000s when the NDA-led government, led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, was in power. This way, the fertility rates kind of did not really, even out across states. So they chose to pause it again for almost 30 years, and they only split 3 big states, but they did not delimit constituencies or increase Lok Sabha seats, and chose to say that the next delimitation will happen at the first census after 2026. Right. So in normal circumstances, this would have been the 2031 census, but since the 2021 census has not happened yet, due to COVID and other reasons, we might be in a situation where the next census will happen, in 2026 or just after, and then the delimitation exercises will be conducted for the 2029 elections. So that's why this has become like a major discussion point.
Yes. The 2029 elections could probably see a different Lok Sabha picture altogether, right?
Yeah.
That's where the angst is coming from, because we could see an entirely different new face of the Lok Sabha with the firstly maybe number of seats increasing, or that we'll talk about later, but mostly the number of representatives from different states will change. Why is this so? Because the southern states, mostly the southern states, have had a control over the population, and therefore the number of people will reduce, and therefore the number of seats will reduce. However, the northern states still have higher population, and therefore, because we have to follow the one person, one vote principle, they will get larger number of seats in the new Lok Sabha. Right? So now, what is the problem there? Okay, so the southern states are all up in arms. At least the political economy around this is up in arms because the southern states feel like their voice in the Lok Sabha will not be heard, because this would mean that Uttar Pradesh will get a disproportionately high number of seats, but which, if you go by arithmetic, makes perfect sense. But the balancing of the two, again, principles is what is causing the angst, right? So what do you think is the solution? Like, should we say that just, again, kick the can down the road further, stop the delimitation process, let's continue the way it is, because that way we'll maintain peace in the thing? Or should we say that let's just go ahead with this, because if we don't do this, at some point you have to do it, right? So what do you think we should do?
Yeah. So the two main problems that I mentioned at the start, right? So the first problem was that, the risk across India is very high. The only solution you can give to that is to increase representation. There are a lot of, the implications down the road for a democracy if people are not, represented enough in parliament, is the highest lawmaking kind of body in the country, right? So that's kind of the only obvious solution, is to increase Lok Sabha seats. The question is how much, right? So as I said, the first two exercises increase the seats to kind of 543 that they are right now. But based on the representation ratio, if we take the same ratio as it was in 1971, which was about 10 lakh, then the Lok Sabha seats need to be increased today to 1805, which is almost like more than 3 times what they are right now, which is which is a little too much. But there have been calculations done by other researchers which say that if no state today was to lose seats, but still kind of the same ratio was to be maintained across the states, then the Lok Sabha could be expanded to 848 members, and kind of around the same number of seats the new building has. So we might say that that's a number that they are looking at. So what I say when I say no state should lose seats is that, say, the ratio is 10 lakhs, for example, right? But smaller states like Sikkim or even union territories might not have that much of population, so they should still get one seat at least. But giving them one seat, then you can equate that ratio across the country, and then you can increase the seats there. So that's one solution. Another solution is, okay, if you say representation is the problem at large, then you can increase seats in the Vidhan Sabhas. So I show in my paper that even though the MP to population ratio, the number of people an MP represents has increased over the years and is wildly different across states, the MLA ratio, or the number of people an MLA represents, it's more or less the same across states, right? Excluding smaller states, it's pretty much kind of static across states. So if that could be increased, then people get more representation. The caveat with that is, with more representation, there needs to be more power, right? So not to paraphrase Spider-Man, but still, if you give more representation to people in states, then the states need to get more power over finances, over bills, over laws, etc. So the second solution is really dependent on that. And as we'll see, in the next few minutes, there is a lot of these contentious kind of solutions. So you make a solution, but then that has to come with something else. So these are the two main solutions: increase seats, that's the basic, but where, in Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha. Then to solve, malapportionment among states, I think, again, there's only one possible, one obvious solution, is that you redraw constituencies according to population. The one person, one vote principle is, really entrenched in any kind of democracy. And right now it's not, one person's vote is not equal to another person's vote. As we said, average person in Sikkim has an electoral, represents like 4 times more power than an average vote in Rajasthan. So that makes no sense.
May just to give the listeners some broad idea about what we mean when we say malapportionment, is the number of, like we said, the number of people represented by one MP is not the same across the country.
Yeah,
Okay?
right.
For instance, one MP represents approximately 3.1 million citizens in Bihar, while in Kerala, that corresponding ratio stands at 1.75 million people.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going against the one person, one vote principle. And if we had corrected for a lot of this malapportionment, etc., already in 2001, we saw that the research shows that TN should have had fewer seats while UP should have got more. Okay, so all extrapolating all of this says that if we do delimitation, if we do all of this, if we correct for all this malapportionment, the northern states will gain as many as 22 seats. And southern states could lose. I don't know if we should use the term lose, because as per population, they're getting the right number of seats. But going by current numbers, they would lose around 15, 16 seats is the calculation that is there. Okay, so this is the malapportionment problem. Again, when we're talking, this will again go into when the women's reservation bill comes up, it will have its own problems and all of that. Okay, so the issue is far more nuanced than just few people are losing, few people are winning, etc. So you were going into solutions for solving this.
Yes. So, we might say that, southern states will lose share in the Lok Sabha. So they won't lose seats, but they'll lose, the political prowess they have, basically the share of their, seats in the Lok Sabha. Okay. So what we need to solve for then is, political capture by high population states, right? So that's what the main problem is, that when we redraw constituencies based on population, states that did not control their population or could not control their population will have much more seats. So for example, if states are, when constituency redrawn according to population, UP will have approximately 16% share of the total number of seats. And then after that comes, Bihar and Maharashtra, like I think 9.1 and 9.9%, which is a huge kind of share, right? One state shouldn't really control so much of a parliamentary body. How do you solve for that? So one option is to split big states, right? In which you say that, say one state is, it's gaining too much power, you split them, and, they'll become two states that can give, opportunities for regional powers to come up, and then stop, kind of prevent them from dictating the whole, what is discussed in the Lok Sabha, what bills can pass, what bills can come, etc. So that's kind of one.
Yeah, and split has always been discussed as a general governance reform that we need.
Right.
Our states are too large to be managed in the size that they are in currently.
Yeah. And a lot of states
on the table.
The example of UP is taken too many times because it's the biggest state, but even states like, Bihar, the population growth that they have had in the last 3 years, or even though it has been split once in 2001, right? It was even bigger than it is right now. Also states like Maharashtra, there's also a lot of lopsided growth. Some cities are going a lot. Anyway, so there's a lot of merits to these just splitting states as well. Better governance, better service delivery, better representation, etc. So that's one kind of solution. Another small ones that can be taken is you cap maximum seats in the Lok Sabha. Is that after if one state has a lot of seats, it's getting, then you put a cap and say, okay, no state can have more than 100 seats, and the largest state can have only 100 seats, say, and then they will their representation will get diluted, but then you're kind of controlling for them not capturing this. Another small solution is to like a diminishing ratio, right? So your representation ratio, like the number of people an MP represents, will increase as your population increases. So states with higher population, representation ratio will also be higher, and states with lower population, there will be lower. So these are kind of problems.
So what you're talking about, capping the number of seats or anything else, may not be the most ideal solution, because again, vote equality, the principle of vote equality may not be met, but it is some kind of a compromise solution.
Yeah.
So that's one way to look at it. So just moving ahead a little, what is it that is causing angst in the southern states, right? Because we see that this is becoming a south versus north. Why should the south be, giving up so much power when it is contributing so much to the GDP of the country? All of these arguments we are hearing, reading a lot. A lot of politicians within the south also have, brought up these issues, saying that we should have more children, and while it does not make economic logic, or it does not make logic in the thing, it is a narrative that is gaining ground, saying that we do not have enough people and therefore we are going to be bulldozed by other states and all that. So my personal view on this is that, and of course everybody's saying let's just stop delimitation. So Pranay and I wrote a paper on this, and we believe that the southern states should not stop the delimitation process as of now. Delimitation, reapportionment process, to be clear. Right? So why do we say this? Because again, like we discussed earlier, it is kicking the can further down the road is not a great place to be, because the future generations will have to deal with it, at some point in time.
Someone will have to deal with it, yeah.
So it's better we do it now. Now, also, if you look at it, the southern states at this point are anyway in a very low level equilibrium with regard to resources, with regard to any kind of thing. So if they are saying that they are governing better, it is not being served greatly in the current arrangement. So what we're trying to say is they should give a conditional go ahead for delimitation, should not block it, but we should use this as an opportunity to actually get more governance reforms, to get more power across the states. Like you said, we were talking about various political reforms. You spoke about splitting the states, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there are other things like, whatever?
Right. Yeah. So I think to kind of sum up your is that this is not just a mathematical exercise, right? It is an exercise of federalism. Federalism is in question right now. So the southern states should kind of use this stretching of the Overton window, so to say, to ask for better reform, better dilution of powers, etc. So there's a lot. There's a few solutions that I think people have been talking about them. That some of them I've mentioned in my paper. So one of them is to reform the Rajya Sabha. So the Rajya Sabha right now in India works like this. People elect, representatives to the Lok Sabha, and these representatives elect, representatives to the Rajya Sabha. So based on, for states, but still the number of people, that every state gets in the Rajya Sabha is still based on population. So both houses are based on population, right? So states with high population will still get the same, it will still. So that's the same problem as the Lok Sabha. What a few other countries do to kind of remedy this is that they give every state a same number of votes. So every state gets one vote, or like one member or two members, whatever, in the Rajya Sabha, and then that kind of balances out. So, constituency, based on population in one house, and every state has one vote or two votes regardless of their population, whatever, in the second house. So that gives a kind of balance. States that don't have as much people living there still have the same kind of voice just because they are a state, right? So that's one solution. There have been calls to reform our Rajya Sabha that way. So to say that the house, the upper house parliament can represent the same, will have the same seats for every state. That will kind of balance out the power. However, like I said, this is also a contentious reform. This has to come with, again, more power being given to the Rajya Sabha. So right now the Rajya Sabha can block bills. They can give their comments on other bills, but they can't stop money bills, right? And finance is a major issue for any kind of state. Is that how much money states get, or in central sponsored schemes, or other kind of reforms is in the Lok Sabha, and the Rajya Sabha really has no control over it. So if you want to divide that power, then you also need to allow probably for the Rajya Sabha to block money bills, or not. Money bills can be passed without Rajya Sabha agreeing.
That is more of a check and balance in
Check and balance. Yeah. Another problem with the Rajya Sabha is that the domicile requirement for the Rajya Sabha was removed, right? So any person from any state can be nominated to the Rajya Sabha from any state. I think that also kind of needs to be thought about again. Does that really implement a check and balance system as much? A very drastic kind of solution was, put forth by Shruti Rajagopalan, who said that states should get hits in Rajya Sabha based on how much revenue they contribute to taxes in general. So that again keeps kind of check and balance system if finance is a really big problem. The reform is not I don't think it's very politically feasible, but I mean, it gives a good idea of,
And
what
also, it's not just about money. I think there are a lot of other bills also.
There are other problems. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are other problems not in the ambit of this, seats or etc. That some could include, giving more vertical devolution to states. So yeah.
So the fears of the southern states are not unfounded. They come from a genuine grouse. The grouse being that in 1971, after the 1971 census, or when the delimitation was put on hold, it was said that all states should control the population. The southern states have done a good job of controlling population. Most of the southern states are at replacement rate or, are around there. So their point is that we have actually gone about achieving the mandate that was given to us. So then now why would you punish us for achieving that mandate, right? That is a genuine grouse that they could have. So again, how this again plays out is because all the money that gets devolved down is also again dependent on the number of people you have in each of the states. Now, if this happens, then the devolution also will come down. But the solution, again, if the southern states actually use this opportunity, they could strike a bargain and say that increase devolution to 50% from the current percent. Even here, there are the 42% comes with a lot of centrally sponsored schemes and all of that, right? So, like untied funds, if you give us 50%, then, it will be easier or it will be better for the southern states. They could use that argument to say that, okay, we will allow for delimitation, but do X, Y, and Z for us. And that is comprehensive economic and political solution that they should look for. It's not
kind of a bargain.
Yeah, it's not just the economic part, it is also economic and political part. So if we say devolution is one, the other thing is also like if we just remove too many centralizing tendencies at the union, like if we just trim the union, state and concurrent lists, maybe the ambit or the remit of the states would increase and therefore devolution will have to come down. So if you just those 5 or 6 things like defense, telecom, currency, or any of those in the union list and give everything else to the state list, reduce centrally sponsored schemes. That means that the development mandate or governance mandates for the states will increase and therefore the revenue for them will also increase. And that will lead to better governance too. Yeah. So that is one part of the solution or one part of the package that the southern states can actually ask for. The other part, like you said, let's reform the Rajya Sabha. Let's look at what we can do for the interstate council. The interstate council used to play a very important role in mediating disputes between the union and the states, as well as between the states, water disputes or anything of that sort. So we need to bring that back so that, there is more discussion, there is more debate between the union and states just for more governance related issues. And finally, the political thing we spoke about splitting larger states, specifically Uttar Pradesh, because in the new scheme of things, it is going to be a disproportionate actor. And the spirit of federalism will get violated, even if there is one disproportionate actor in the whole scheme. Right? So dividing Uttar Pradesh could be one contentious thing, but it is not something new. It is not something too radical. We have spoken about this earlier, right? So that is net what I had, in the sense that the southern states are a valid reason to be upset, but the solution to that is not to block delimitation, but to actually ask for a comprehensive economic as well
Right.
as political solution to the entire problem. Right.
Right.
So what else? I mean, do you have any other?
Yeah, I think one problem that we haven't addressed is that this problem was, enhanced, I would say, by sort of kicking the can down the road, right? So, can the southern states, or in general, people in general demand for delimitation exercise to happen timely. So there needs to be, if probably this, successive delimitation exercise were conducted even after the 70s, this would have been lesser of a problem probably. Right now, tensions would not have been flared as much, right? And some states are not feeling the inequality just right now, but they have been feeling it over the last 60 years. So I think we should work out a way in which this happens regularly. Probably it can be to say that, okay, there's a cap on Lok Sabha seats, they won't increase after that, they will just get reapportioned. But again, then comes the problem of states probably losing seats. So I don't know, some kind of way in which this can happen timelier to prevent a sort of, whatever situation we are right now.
Yeah. So the last point that I had actually from my side is that, yeah, great. We're talking about political solutions. We're talking about economic solutions, all of that. But why should the center listen, or why should the union government even listen to anything
Right.
states say, right? Because constitutionally, the southern states have to go with the thing. So why should the union government actually listen to us, listen to the southern states? The answer for that really is that, we've seen in the past that if you do not take all stakeholders on board, the entire exercise can be actually completely derailed and you will not get the best results. And also from a point of view of the history of this, right? We've seen when there was this whole language agitation in the 60s, we saw that there was, all of this will spill out in the areas of language, culture, etc. While you might not be able to put forth your case to the voters in technical terms, but this will get translated to issues regarding to language and culture, etc. And that can have a negative effect on society, on bonds within society, and the way, as it is, a lot of things are frayed at this point in time. We don't want to add to the fuel there. And therefore, it makes sense for the union government to actually bring everybody on board before this whole exercise is, taken, is you go ahead with this whole exercise.
Right.
Also, recently we saw the farmers' agitation and what happened when you did not take one group of stakeholders on board.
Yeah.
So we don't want that kind of a repeat. So it really makes sense for the union government, while may not be constitutionally legally important for you to actually take this into consideration, but it makes sense to bring everybody on board. And on the other side, if you look at the leaders from the southern states, I think they should also not take a very combative stance to the whole thing, because, like I mentioned, they're already in a very low level equilibrium with regard to funds or with regard to government's mandates itself. Use this opportunity to drive a bargain and see what best can come out of it. Right?
Right.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up quite well. We shouldn't look at this as, to be put in economic terms, as a zero-sum game, right? I think everyone can, gain from this. I think it should be viewed as a positive-sum game to see what reforms could be asked for, what could be, what good can be done for federalism, for, devolution of power, decentralization in the country based on, in this exercise, and also considering how important this is right now, how its importance has increased over the last 60 years.
Yeah. So finally, yes, like, to sum it up in one sentence, it is not just the arithmetic of it, but it is, the entire package, because the arithmetic can be solved quickly, but you need to solve for much more than just the seat arithmetic or the vote here. Right. So yeah, we need to go beyond the arithmetic, and we need leadership that is more far-sighted, more cooperative, and
Yeah.
the true sense of cooperative federalism will actually be put to test in this exercise. So let's see where this goes. And we'll be watching this issue more closely. We'll be reading more about it. And let's hope the census takes off first place. Yeah. So
Yes.
all of this comes after the census.
Yeah.
So yeah, here's hoping that the census takes off in the next few months. Thank you, Miheer, for joining us, and thanks to all the listeners to have tuned in. You may not agree with everything that we said, but this is one point of view, and we hope you keep this in mind. If you have other opinions, if you have something to discuss, do write back to us. Thanks, and we'll join you in for another episode later sometime.
Thanks, Suman.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.